The silver light of a full moon bathed the dusty frontier town of Silver Creek, Colorado. As Sophia Zimmerman clutched her shawl tightly around her shoulders, the cool night air of 1878 carrying whispers of fiddle music from the town hall. She'd been in town just 3 weeks, and already the loneliness threatened to swallow her whole. Sophia had never intended to end up in Silver Creek. At 22, she had imagined a different life for herself, perhaps as a schoolteacher back east or even a shop assistant in Denver. But fate had other plans when her father passed unexpectedly, leaving her with nothing but a small inheritance and a letter from an old family friend offering her a position at the Silver Creek Mercantile. The dance tonight was a welcome distraction from the monotony of her new life. From her position in the shadows of the town hall, Sophia observed the whirling couples, miners and their wives, ranch hands and shopkeepers' daughters, all coming together in a rare moment of frontier gaiety. The wooden floorboards creaked beneath stamping boots, and the air was thick with laughter and the scent of perfume mingling with tobacco. "You cannot hide in the shadows all night, Miss Zimmerman." Sophia turned, startled by the deep voice. "Mrs. Gardner," the shopkeeper's wife who had taken Sophia under her wing, stood with her hands on her ample hips. "I'm just watching, Mrs. Gardner. I don't know anyone well enough to dance." "Nonsense. Everyone is a stranger until they're not." Mrs. Gardner gave her a gentle push forward. "Go on, dear. Youth is wasted on those who stand in corners." Reluctantly, Sophia took a few steps forward, the lamplight now illuminating the simple blue dress she had painstakingly mended for the occasion. The music shifted to a slower tune and couples began to pair off again. She felt exposed now, no longer protected by the shadows, and was about to retreat when she noticed him. He stood across the room, tall, broad-shouldered, with a quiet confidence that set him apart from the boisterous cowboys who'd been showing off all evening. His dark hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, and though he wore the practical clothes of a rancher, there was something refined in his bearing. When his eyes met hers, Sophia felt a jolt of recognition, though she was certain they had never met. The stranger made his way through the crowd, purposeful but unhurried. As he approached, Sophia noticed the slight limp in his gait, though it did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. He stopped before her, the hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You look like you're waiting for something, miss," he said, his voice gentle yet carrying over the music. "Or perhaps someone." Sophia shook her head, feeling a warmth rise to her cheeks. "No, sir, just enjoying the music." From the shadows, he arched an eyebrow, then extended his hand. "Dance with me." It wasn't a question so much as an invitation, and before Sophia could consider the propriety of dancing with a stranger, she found her hand in his. "I'm Clayton O'Malley," he said as he led her toward the center of the room. "I run the Double Circle Ranch about 10 miles outside of town." "Sophia Zimmerman," she replied. "I work at the Mercantile." "I know," Clayton said, surprising her. "I noticed you the first day you arrived on the stage. Not many new faces come to Silver Creek these days." As Clayton's hand settled at her waist, Sophia became acutely aware of the eyes upon them. She wasn't naive about frontier towns and their gossip. "People are watching," she whispered. "Let them," Clayton replied, guiding her into the dance with surprising grace for a man who worked the land. "I've been hoping to meet you properly, Miss Zimmerman, though I admit I didn't expect it would be at a dance." "Why not? You've turned down 3 invitations to social gatherings since you arrived. The town was beginning to think you were a recluse." Sophia nearly missed a step. "How could you possibly know that?" Clayton's laugh was warm, rumbling through his chest. "Silver Creek might look sprawling, but news travels faster than a prairie fire, especially when it concerns a beautiful woman from back east." The compliment caught Sophia off guard, and she focused on the steps of the dance to hide her fluster. "I'm hardly from back east, Mr. O'Malley. I grew up in Denver." "Denver," he whistled low. "That's practically a metropolis compared to our little town. What brought you all the way out here?" Something in his genuine curiosity made Sophia want to share more than she usually would with a stranger. My father died. He was a physician. I had no brothers or uncles to care for me, and the money wouldn't last forever in Denver. Clayton's expression softened. I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Zimmerman. Thank you. She paused, then decided to turn the conversation. And what about you, Mr. O'Malley? Have you always been a rancher? A shadow passed over his face so quickly Sophia thought she might have imagined it. No, madam. I was a captain in the army before I came here. Fought in the war between the states. That explained the limp, Sophia thought, though she knew better than to ask about it. Many men had returned from the war with both visible and invisible wounds. And now you raise cattle? Clayton nodded. The Double Circle was just a struggling homestead when I bought it 8 years ago. Now we run over 500 head of cattle and employ 12 men year-round. Sophia was impressed despite herself. Building something from nearly nothing in this harsh territory required determination and intelligence qualities that, she was beginning to suspect, Clayton O'Malley possessed in abundance. The music drew to a close, but Clayton didn't immediately release her. Would you honor me with another dance, Miss Zimmerman? She should say no. Proper ladies didn't dance multiple dances with the same gentleman unless they were courting. But there was something about Clayton O'Malley that made Sophia want to set aside propriety, if only for one evening. Yes, she said simply. The fiddler struck up a livelier tune, and soon they were caught up in the energetic movements of a reel. Sophia found herself laughing as Clayton guided her through the steps, his own face alight with enjoyment. When was the last time she had laughed so freely? Before her father's illness, certainly. As the evening progressed, Sophia danced not only with Clayton but with several other men from town, though her eyes frequently sought out the rancher as he conversed with friends or leaned against the wall, watching her with undisguised interest. Near the end of the night, Clayton approached her again, this time with 2 cups of punch. You're the talk of the evening, he said, handing her a cup. The mysterious Miss Zimmerman finally gracing us with her presence. Sophia took a sip of the sweet punch. Hardly mysterious, just cautious. Cautious is good in these parts, Clayton agreed, but don't be too cautious. You might miss out on the best parts of life. Before Sophia could respond, Mrs. Gardner appeared at her side. My dear, it's getting late, and I promised your employer I'd see you safely home. Clayton straightened. I'd be happy to escort Miss Zimmerman if she permits. Mrs. Gardner's eyebrows shot up, and Sophia knew that by tomorrow the whole town would be speculating about her and Clayton O'Malley. Still, the thought of a few more minutes in his company was too tempting to resist. That would be kind of you, Mr. O'Malley, Sophia said, then turned to Mrs. Gardner. If you don't mind, the older woman smiled knowingly. Not at all, dear, just be mindful of the hour. She gave Clayton a pointed look, and the proprieties, Clayton tipped his hat. Yes, madam. I was raised properly, despite appearances. After gathering her shawl, Sophia stepped out into the cool night with Clayton. The streets of Silver Creek were quiet now, most of its inhabitants either at the dance or already abed. The moon cast long shadows across the dirt road as they walked toward the small room Sophia rented above the milliner's shop. I hope you enjoyed yourself tonight, Clayton said, walking slowly to accommodate her shorter strides. I did very much. Thank you for asking me to dance. I've been wanting to introduce myself since you arrived, he admitted. But a rancher doesn't get to town as often as he'd like, especially during calving season. Sophia was touched by his honesty. Well, I'm glad you chose tonight. They reached the stairs that led to her room, and Sophia turned to face him. In the moonlight, his features were cast in silver and shadow, making him look almost otherworldly. Miss Zimmerman, Clayton began, removing his hat. I know we've only just met properly, but I was wondering if I might call on you sometime. Perhaps next Sunday, after church? Sophia hesitated. She had come to Silver Creek to start anew, to build a life of independence. Getting involved with a man, especially one as compelling as Clayton O'Malley, hadn't been part of her plan. Mr. O'Malley, Clayton, he corrected gently. And before you answer, know that I'm only asking for the chance to know you better, nothing more. His sincerity was disarming. Sunday then, Sophia found herself saying. After church, the smile that spread across his face made her heart skip a beat. I'll be there. He took her hand and with old-world courtesy pressed a brief kiss to her knuckles. Good night, Sophia. Good night, Clayton. As she watched him walk away, his tall figure gradually swallowed by the darkness, Sophia wondered what she had just set in motion. She had come to Silver Creek seeking stability, not romance. And yet, as she climbed the stairs to her modest room, she couldn't help but feel that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't yet fathom. The following morning, Sophia woke to the sound of horses and wagons passing beneath her window. Silver Creek came alive early, especially on market days when ranchers and farmers from outlying homesteads brought their goods to trade. As she dressed in her practical work dress and pinned her hair into a simple chignon, Sophia's thoughts drifted to Clayton O'Malley. Had she been too forward, agreeing to let him call on her? What did she really know about him, beyond his occupation and charm? The bell above the mercantile door chimed as Sophia entered precisely at 8 o'clock. Mr. Thornton, her employer, was already arranging a display of canned goods. Good morning, Miss Zimmerman, he called. I hear you had quite the evening at the dance. Sophia silently cursed the efficiency of small-town gossip. It was a pleasant diversion, Mr. Thornton. More than pleasant, from what Mrs. Gardner tells me. Seems you caught the eye of Clayton O'Malley. He eyed her over his spectacles. He's a good man, O'Malley, one of the few who pays his accounts on time. We merely danced, Mr. Thornton, Sophia said, donning her work apron. Nothing more. Of course, he said, though his expression suggested he thought otherwise. Well, we've a busy day ahead. The Blackfoot Creek miners will be coming in for supplies, and I've got a new shipment of fabric that needs pricing. Grateful for the change of subject, Sophia threw herself into her work. The day passed in a blur of customers, inventory, and arithmetic. By late afternoon, when the store was momentarily empty, Sophia allowed herself to sit on the stool behind the counter and rest her aching feet. The bell chimed again, and Sophia looked up to see a woman she recognized as one of the dancers from the previous night. She was elegantly dressed for Silver Creek, with a fashionable hat and a dress that spoke of Eastern tailoring. Good afternoon, Sophia greeted. How may I help you? The woman approached the counter, appraising Sophia with undisguised curiosity. So you're the one who had Clayton's attention all evening. Sophia straightened, instantly on guard. I'm sorry, I don't believe we've been introduced. Victoria Hargrove, the woman said, extending a gloved hand. My father owns the Silver Creek Bank. Sophia Zimmerman, she replied, shaking the offered hand briefly. A pleasure to meet you, Miss Hargrove. Mrs. Hargrove, the woman corrected, widowed these past 2 years. She removed her gloves, revealing delicate hands adorned with expensive rings. I should warn you about Clayton O'Malley. Sophia's defenses rose further. I don't see that it's any of your concern, Mrs. Hargrove. Perhaps not, Victoria conceded, but I've known Clayton since he first came to Silver Creek. He's not the marrying kind, Miss Zimmerman. He's turned down half the eligible women in the county. I wasn't aware that dancing with a gentleman constituted a marriage proposal, Sophia replied coolly. Victoria laughed, though there was little humor in it. You're new here, so I'll be plain. Clayton O'Malley is the most eligible bachelor in 3 counties. He has land, cattle, and connections in Denver. Every unmarried woman and several widows have set their caps for him. None have succeeded. And you're telling me this because I'd hate to see another young woman disappointed. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. Now, I'll take 2 pounds of sugar and a yard of that blue calico. As Sophia measured out the requested items, she considered Victoria's warning. Was it genuinely well-intentioned, or was Mrs. Hargrove herself interested in Clayton? Either way, Sophia reminded herself that she had only agreed to receive a caller, not to walk down the aisle. That will be 75 cents, Sophia said, wrapping the purchases. Victoria placed the coins on the counter. Just remember what I said, Miss Zimmerman. Clayton O'Malley may dance with you, but he dances with many. After she left, Sophia found her good mood from the morning had evaporated. She told herself it didn't matter what Clayton's history with women might be, she was focused on building her own life, not attaching herself to a man, no matter how handsome or charming. The remainder of the week passed without incident. Sophia settled back into her routine of work, quiet evenings reading by lamplight and Sunday morning church services. She tried not to think about Clayton's promise to call on her, telling herself it was better if he forgot. But when Sunday arrived, and Sophia emerged from the small white church into the bright midday sun, Clayton was waiting. He stood by a handsome chestnut horse, dressed in his Sunday best, a dark suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, and a crisp white shirt that made his sun-bronzed skin appear even darker. Several townspeople glanced between them with undisguised interest, and Sophia saw Victoria Hargrove watching from across the street, her expression unreadable. "Miss Zimmerman," Clayton said, approaching with his hat in his hands. "You look lovely today." Sophia smoothed the skirt of her best dress, a sage green that brought out the golden flecks in her hazel eyes. "Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. I was hoping you might join me for a picnic," he said. "It's a fine day, and I know a spot by the creek where the wildflowers are in bloom." A picnic alone with a man she barely knew, it was decidedly improper, and yet Sophia found herself wanting to accept. "I'm not sure that would be appropriate," she said hesitantly. Clayton's expression fell slightly, but he quickly recovered. "You're right, of course. Perhaps Mrs. Gardner would agree to accompany us as a chaperone." His willingness to observe the proprieties impressed Sophia. "Let me ask her." To Sophia's surprise, Mrs. Gardner readily agreed, though she insisted on bringing her husband as well. "For appearances," she said with a wink that suggested she understood more than she let on. An hour later, the four of them were settled on blankets by Silver Creek, a gentle stream that gave the town its name. The Gardners sat at a discreet distance, engaged in their own conversation, while Clayton unpacked a basket filled with cold chicken, fresh bread, and early summer berries. "This is lovely," Sophia admitted, watching the water ripple over stones. "I haven't been out of town since I arrived." "Silver Creek has its charms," Clayton said, "but the real beauty of Colorado is out here." He gestured to the rolling hills that surrounded them, dotted with pine trees and wildflowers. "I fell in love with this land the first time I saw it. Is that why you stayed, after the war?" Clayton nodded, his expression growing contemplative. "I couldn't go back east, too many ghosts." He broke off a piece of bread. "What about you? Do you miss Denver?" Sophia considered the question. "Sometimes I miss the libraries and theaters. But there's something appealing about Silver Creek's simplicity." "And yet you seem, apart from it all," Clayton observed, "like you're not quite sure you belong." His perception startled her. "How could you know that?" "I recognize the look," he said simply. "I wore it myself for the first year I was here." Their conversation flowed easily after that, touching on books they'd read, places they'd seen, and dreams they harbored. Clayton spoke of his plans to expand his ranch, perhaps adding sheep to his cattle operation. Sophia confessed her hope to someday open a small lending library for the town. Silver Creek could use more books, Clayton agreed, and someone passionate about sharing them. As the afternoon waned, Mrs. Gardner cleared her throat pointedly. "We should be heading back before the light fades, dear ones." The ride back to town was filled with comfortable silence, broken occasionally by Mr. Gardner's observations about the changing landscape. When they reached the milliner's shop, Clayton helped Sophia down from his horse, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you for a wonderful afternoon," she said, suddenly shy. "The pleasure was mine." Clayton hesitated, then added, "I'll be in town again on Thursday for the cattlemen's meeting. Perhaps we could take supper at the hotel restaurant." Sophia was aware of Mrs. Gardner watching them with undisguised interest. "I would like that," she said finally. Clayton's smile lit up his entire face. "Thursday then, 6 o'clock," 6 o'clock, she confirmed. As she watched him ride away with the gardeners, Sophia tried to quell the flutter of excitement in her chest. It was just supper, she told herself, nothing more. But even as she climbed the stairs to her room, she knew she was already looking forward to Thursday more than she should. The next few days crawled by at an agonizing pace. Sophia found herself distracted at work, earning a gentle reprimand from Mr. Thornton when she mislabeled a shipment of flour. She spent her evenings alternating between reading and staring out the window at the distant hills, wondering what Clayton was doing at that moment. On Wednesday afternoon, a package arrived at the mercantile addressed to her. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a collection of poetry by Emily Dickinson. A note tucked between the pages read, "For your future library. Looking forward to tomorrow, C.O." Sophia hugged the book to her chest, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. It wasn't expensive or ostentatious, but it showed that Clayton had been listening, that he remembered her dream. Thursday evening found Sophia standing before her small mirror, fussing with her hair. She had pinned it up, letting a few tendrils frame her face, and wore her second-best dress, a deep blue that complemented her fair complexion. It wasn't exactly fashionable by Denver standards, but it was the best she could do in Silver Creek. At precisely 6 o'clock, a knock sounded at the door leading to her rooms. Sophia took a deep breath, smoothed her skirts one final time, and opened the door. Clayton stood there, looking handsome in a dark suit similar to the one he'd worn on Sunday. His dark hair was neatly combed and he held his hat in his hands. "Good evening, Miss Zimmerman." "Good evening, Mr. O'Malley." She stepped out, locking the door behind her. "You look beautiful," he said, his gaze appreciative but respectful. "Thank you." Sophia felt her cheeks warm. "And thank you for the book. It was a thoughtful gift." "I'm glad you liked it. I remembered you mentioning poetry." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" The Silver Creek Hotel restaurant was the finest establishment in town, which wasn't saying much by Eastern standards. Still, the tables were covered with clean cloths, the silverware polished, and the food reputed to be excellent. As they entered, Sophia was acutely aware of the glances and whispers that followed them. Clayton O'Malley dining with the new shop girl was evidently worthy of gossip. Among the diners, she spotted Victoria Hargrove seated with an older gentleman who might have been her father. Victoria's gaze lingered on them, her expression calculating. "Don't mind them," Clayton murmured, guiding Sophia to a table near the window. "Small towns thrive on talk." "And what are they saying about us, do you think?" Sophia asked as he held her chair. Clayton's mouth quirked into a half-smile. "That I'm courting you, most likely." The directness of his answer caught her off guard. "And are you courting me?" He regarded her steadily as he took his own seat. "Would it be unwelcome if I were?" Sophia considered the question seriously. In the short time she'd known Clayton, she'd found him to be kind, intelligent, and considerate, qualities she valued highly. But Mrs. Hargrove's warning echoed in her mind. "I've been told you're not the marrying kind," she said finally. "That you've turned down half the county." Clayton's eyebrows rose. "Victoria Hargrove, I presume?" Sophia nodded, slightly embarrassed. "Mrs. Hargrove has a unique perspective on things," Clayton said diplomatically. "It's true I haven't married, but that's not for lack of desire for a family. I simply haven't met a woman I could imagine sharing my life with." His gaze held hers. "Until recently." Sophia's heart quickened at the implication, but she forced herself to remain practical. "You hardly know me, Mr. O'Malley." "Clayton," he reminded her. "And I know enough to want to know more. That's what courting is for, isn't it? Getting to know one another properly." Before Sophia could respond, the waiter arrived to take their order. The moment passed, and their conversation shifted to lighter topics: the upcoming town festival, the unusually wet spring, the new schoolteacher expected to arrive in the fall. As they enjoyed their meal, roast beef for Clayton, chicken for Sophia, she found herself growing more comfortable in his presence. There was an ease between them that belied their short acquaintance, as if they'd known each other far longer than a week. "Tell me about your family," Clayton said as they lingered over apple pie. You mentioned your father was a physician, but what about your mother? Sophia's expression softened. She died when I was 12, influenza. My father never remarried, so it was just the two of us. I'm sorry, Clayton said, his expression genuinely sympathetic. It must have been difficult losing her so young. It was, but my father did his best. Sophia twirled her fork absently. He taught me to love books, to think for myself. He wanted me to become a teacher, but there wasn't money for the normal school after he fell ill. He spent his last years unable to practice medicine, and what savings he had went quickly. Clayton reached across the table, briefly covering her hand with his. He would be proud of you, Sophia. Coming here, making your own way, that takes courage. His touch sent a pleasant warmth through her. What about your family? A shadow crossed Clayton's face. My parents had a small farm in Pennsylvania. They died while I was fighting in the war. Fever took them both within a week of each other. I have a sister in Boston, married to a banker. We write occasionally. So we're both alone, Sophia observed softly. Clayton's gaze held hers. Not entirely, not anymore. The simple statement, delivered without pretense or flowery declarations, touched something deep within Sophia. Perhaps it was because they shared the experience of loss, or perhaps it was the quiet confidence with which he spoke. Either way, she found herself warming to the idea that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she had thought. After dinner, Clayton walked Sophia back to her rooms. The night was clear, stars strewn across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. The streets of Silver Creek were quiet, most businesses closed for the evening, though light and piano music spilled from the saloon at the end of the main street. Will you be in town for the festival next weekend? Sophia asked as they approached her building. I wouldn't miss it, Clayton replied. In fact, I was hoping you might agree to attend with me. There's dancing in the evening. Sophia smiled, remembering their first meeting. As long as you don't expect me to hide in the shadows. Clayton laughed, the sound warm in the cool night air. No shadows for you, Sophia Zimmerman. You deserve to stand in the light. They reached her door, and Sophia turned to face him. Thank you for supper. I enjoyed it very much. As did I. Clayton took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. May I call on you again before the festival? Perhaps Sunday after church? I'd like that, Sophia said, surprised by how much she meant it. Clayton raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her skin. Good night, Sophia. Good night, Clayton. As she watched him walk away, Sophia felt a curious mixture of excitement and trepidation. She was beginning to care for Clayton O'Malley, perhaps more than was wise after such a short acquaintance. But there was something about him that called to her, something that made her want to take a chance. With a sigh, she entered her room and began to prepare for bed. As she unpinned her hair, letting it fall around her shoulders, Sophia caught sight of the poetry book Clayton had given her. She picked it up, thumbing through the pages until a particular poem caught her eye. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Hope, was that what she was feeling? After months of just surviving, of focusing on practical matters like food and shelter and employment, was she finally allowing herself to hope for something more? Sophia closed the book and set it on her bedside table. Whatever was happening between her and Clayton, she would approach it with caution. But perhaps, she thought as she extinguished the lamp, a little hope wasn't such a dangerous thing after all. The days leading up to the festival were filled with anticipation. Silver Creek buzzed with activity as townsfolk hung bunting from storefronts, erected a bandstand in the town square, and prepared for the influx of visitors from surrounding homesteads and ranches. True to his word, Clayton called on Sophia the Sunday after their dinner. They attended church together, drawing even more curious glances, and afterward took a walk around town, Mrs. Gardner following at a discreet distance. Clayton told her stories about the early days of his ranch, the harsh winters, the cattle thieves, the satisfaction of watching something grow from nothing. I have something for you, he said as they paused by the newly constructed bandstand. From his pocket, he withdrew a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Another gift. You'll spoil me, Mr. O'Malley," Sophia teased. "That's the general idea," he replied with a grin. Sophia unwrapped the package to find a delicate silver hairpin topped with a small, intricately crafted wildflower. "It's beautiful," she breathed, running her finger over the detailed petals. "I had it made in Denver," Clayton explained. "It reminded me of the flowers by the creek where we had our picnic." The thoughtfulness of the gift touched Sophia deeply. It wasn't extravagant or showy, but personal and meaningful. "Thank you, I'll wear it to the festival." "I look forward to seeing it," Clayton said, his eyes warm with affection. By the day of the festival, it seemed the entire town knew that Clayton O'Malley was courting Sophia Zimmerman. Mr. Thornton gave her the afternoon off without her having to ask, and Mrs. Gardner insisted on helping her prepare for the evening. "You've caught yourself a fine man there," Mrs. Gardner said as she helped Sophia arrange her hair, incorporating the silver hairpin Clayton had given her. "Steady, hardworking, and not hard on the eyes either," Sophia laughed. "Mrs. Gardner, you shock me. Oh, pish, I'm old, not blind." The older woman stepped back to admire her handiwork. "There, you look lovely, dear." Sophia studied her reflection. Her best dress, a rose-colored affair with modest lace trim, complemented her fair skin, and Mrs. Gardner had arranged her honey-brown hair in a becoming style that framed her face. The silver hairpin caught the light whenever she turned her head. "You think it's too soon?" Sophia asked suddenly. "To be so involved with someone I've known such a short time," Mrs. Gardner's expression softened. "The heart knows what it wants, dear. And from what I've seen, Clayton O'Malley is a good man. Those don't come along every day, especially out here." When Clayton arrived to escort her to the festival, his appreciative gaze made Sophia blush. "You look absolutely beautiful," he said, offering her his arm. The town square was transformed. Lanterns hung from wires strung between buildings, casting a warm glow over the festivities. Tables laden with food lined one side, while the bandstand occupied another. Children ran about with sparklers, their laughter mingling with the music of a small orchestra assembled from the town's more talented musicians. Clayton and Sophia moved through the crowd, stopping to chat with townspeople and sample the offerings at the food tables. Sophia noticed that people treated Clayton with respect, often seeking his opinion on matters ranging from cattle prices to the new railroad rumored to be coming through the area. "You're quite the local authority," she observed as they moved away from a group of merchants. Clayton shrugged. "I've been lucky in business, that's all. People tend to listen to those who succeed." "It's more than that," Sophia insisted. "They respect you, trust your judgment." Before Clayton could respond, the orchestra struck up a waltz, and couples began to move toward the cleared area before the bandstand. "Dance with me?" Clayton asked, echoing his words from their first meeting. Sophia smiled. "I thought you'd never ask." As they joined the other dancers, Sophia felt a sense of rightness that both thrilled and frightened her. Clayton's hand at her waist, the way he guided her through the steps with confidence, the admiration in his eyes when he looked at her, it all felt like the beginning of something significant. They danced several numbers, stopping only when the musicians took a break. Clayton fetched them cups of lemonade and they stood at the edge of the square, watching the festivities. "Enjoying yourself?" Clayton asked, standing close enough that his arm brushed hers. "Very much," Sophia replied. "It reminds me of the summer festivals in Denver, though on a smaller scale." "Do you miss city life?" Sophia considered the question. "Sometimes, but Silver Creek is growing on me." "Just Silver Creek?" Clayton's tone was light, but his eyes held a question. Before Sophia could answer, a commotion near the saloon caught their attention. A group of cowboys, clearly having partaken liberally of stronger refreshments than lemonade, were growing rowdy. One of them, a tall man with a scraggly beard, was gesturing wildly and speaking loudly enough to be heard over the resumed music. "O'Malley," he called, spotting Clayton. "Didn't expect to see you slumming with the townfolk." Clayton's expression hardened. "Ignore him," he murmured to Sophia. That's Jack Reardon. He works for the Bar T Ranch. There's bad blood between our outfits. But Reardon was already making his way toward them, weaving slightly. Found yourself a pretty one, didn't you? He slurred, looking Sophia up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. Guess the rumors are true. Clayton stepped slightly in front of Sophia. You're drunk, Reardon, go sleep it off. Not before I congratulate you, Reardon sneered. Word is you're finally settling down, must be something special about this one. He leaned around Clayton to leer at Sophia. What's your secret, darlin'? How'd you catch the uncatchable Clayton O'Malley? Sophia felt Clayton tense beside her. That's enough, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Or maybe, Reardon continued as if Clayton hadn't spoken, maybe you just remind him of he never finished the sentence. Clayton's fist connected with Reardon's jaw, sending the drunk cowboy sprawling onto the dirt. The music stuttered to a halt as everyone turned to stare. Clayton? Sophia gasped, shocked by the sudden violence. Reardon struggled to his feet, wiping blood from his split lip. You'll regret that, O'Malley, he spat. Not as much as you'll regret the next one if you don't walk away now, Clayton replied evenly. For a tense moment it seemed Reardon might charge. Then two of his companions appeared, grabbing his arms. Come on, Jack. Not worth it, one of them muttered, casting an apologetic glance at Clayton. As they dragged Reardon away, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Clayton turned to Sophia, his expression a mixture of anger and regret. I'm sorry you had to witness that. Sophia was still processing what had happened. Clayton O'Malley, who had been nothing but gentle and courteous in her presence, had just knocked a man to the ground. What was he going to say? She asked. Who do I remind you of? Clayton's jaw tightened. Not here, he said quietly. Come on. He led her away from the crowd, toward a quiet spot behind the church. The sounds of the festival resumed behind them, though Sophia could still feel curious eyes following their departure. In the shadow of the church, Clayton paced for a moment before turning to face her. I apologize for my behavior. Reardon was being deliberately provocative, but that's no excuse for losing my temper. Clayton, Sophia said gently. What was he talking about? Clayton ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the neat style he'd worn for the evening. There was a woman, he began, then stopped. Before I came to Silver Creek, when I was still in the army, I was engaged to be married. Sophia felt a cold sensation in the pit of her stomach. What happened? Her name was Elizabeth. Her father was my commanding officer. Clayton's eyes were distant, seeing something or someone long gone. We were to be married after the war. I had it all planned out, a small farm, children, a peaceful life away from the fighting. But the war ended and you came here instead, Sophia prompted when he fell silent. Clayton nodded. Elizabeth died during the final year of the war. Typhoid swept through the camp where she was working as a nurse. His voice was flat, as if he'd pushed the emotion so deep it could no longer reach the surface. By the time I returned from the front, she was already buried. Sophia's heart ached for him. I'm so sorry, Clayton. After that, I couldn't stay. Too many memories. I came west, bought land, built the ranch. He met her eyes finally. And I haven't allowed myself to get close to a woman since, until now. The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. And I remind you of her, Sophia asked softly. Clayton shook his head. No, Elizabeth was nothing like you. She was quieter, more traditional in her thinking, but that's not what Reardon meant. He hesitated. What he meant was that people have been waiting years for me to show interest in someone. There's been speculation about why I never married. And now that you're courting me, people are talking, Sophia concluded. People always talk, Clayton said dismissively. What matters is what's true. And the truth is, Sophia, I care for you, more than I expected to, and certainly more than is sensible after such a short acquaintance. The confession, spoken so plainly, made Sophia's breath catch. I care for you too, she admitted, but this is all happening so quickly. A month ago, I didn't even know you existed. Clayton took her hands in his. I'm not asking for promises, Sophia, just time. Time to show you who I am, time for you to decide if what you feel is real. Looking into his earnest face, Sophia felt her reservations begin to dissolve. Yes, their courtship was progressing faster than convention might dictate. Yes, there was still much they didn't know about each other, but the connection between them was undeniable. "I'd like that," she said finally. "Time." Relief washed over Clayton's features. "Thank you." He raised one hand to gently touch the silver hairpin in her hair. "Shall we return to the festival? I believe I owe you another dance." Sophia smiled. "Yes, I believe you do." As they walked back toward the music and laughter, Clayton's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. Whatever lay ahead, Sophia thought, they would face it together. The weeks following the festival marked a change in Sophia's life in Silver Creek. Her courtship with Clayton became official, acknowledged by the town with knowing smiles and approving nods. Clayton rode into town twice a week to see her, sometimes taking her for drives in his buggy, other times simply walking with her through town after she finished work. On one such evening in late June, as they strolled along the creek that gave the town its name, Clayton broached a subject that had been on his mind. "I'd like you to visit the Double Circle," he said. "See the ranch, meet my foreman and his wife. Perhaps this Sunday." Sophia hesitated. Visiting a man's home, even with chaperones present, was a significant step. "Would Mrs. Gardner be willing to accompany me?" she asked. "Of course, and Mr. Gardner too, if he wishes." Clayton picked up a flat stone and skipped it across the water. "The ranch is 10 miles out. We'd leave after church, have dinner, and I'd have you back by evening." The idea of seeing Clayton's home, the place he'd built from nearly nothing, was appealing. "I'd like that," Sophia decided. Sunday dawned clear and warm, the kind of perfect summer day that seemed made for new beginnings. After church, Clayton helped Sophia and Mrs. Gardner into his wagon, Mr. Gardner having declined the invitation in favor of his weekly poker game. The road to the Double Circle Ranch wound through rolling hills that gradually gave way to more open terrain. Wildflowers dotted the landscape, and in the distance, Sophia could see the snow-capped peaks of the Rocky Mountains. "It's beautiful out here," she commented, taking in the vast openness of the land. Clayton, handling the reins with practiced ease, nodded. "That was my first thought when I saw this valley. That and how much work it would take to make something of it." As they crested a hill, the Double Circle spread out before them. A large main house built of timber and stone stood in a cluster of outbuildings: bunkhouse, barn, smokehouse, and various sheds. Beyond, cattle grazed in fenced pastures that seemed to stretch to the horizon. "Oh my," Mrs. Gardner murmured. "You've done well for yourself, Mr. O'Malley." Clayton's expression was one of quiet pride. "It's taken 8 years of hard work. Not all of it was easy." As they approached the house, a woman emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on an apron. She was middle-aged, with graying hair pinned in a practical bun, and a weathered face that spoke of years in the harsh Colorado sun. "That's Martha Jensen," Clayton explained. "My foreman's wife. She keeps house for me and cooks for the hands." Martha greeted them warmly as Clayton helped the women down from the wagon. "So this is the young lady we've been hearing about," she said, smiling at Sophia. "Clayton's been walking around with his head in the clouds since he met you." "Martha," Clayton admonished, though his tone was affectionate. "Oh, hush, you know it's true." Martha ushered them inside. "Dinner's almost ready. I've made roast beef, knowing it's your favorite." The interior of the house was spacious and comfortable, if somewhat masculine in its furnishings. A large stone fireplace dominated the main room, flanked by bookshelves filled with volumes on ranching, history, and literature. Simple but sturdy furniture was arranged to encourage conversation, and windows let in ample light. "It's lovely," Sophia said, genuinely impressed. "Did you build it yourself?" "With help," Clayton acknowledged. "I had a smaller cabin at first, but after the second winter I decided I needed something more substantial." He gestured to a hallway. "There are 3 bedrooms, my study, and a proper kitchen." Martha insisted on that last part. "Any woman with sense would," Mrs. Gardner agreed. Martha showed them to a dining room where the table was already set with Clayton's best china. "My husband Eric will join us shortly. He's just checking on a new calf." Dinner was a pleasant affair. Eric Jensen proved to be a taciturn but friendly man who clearly respected Clayton enormously. The conversation flowed easily, covering everything from the upcoming cattle drive to the latest news from Denver. After the meal, while Mrs. Gardner helped Martha with the dishes despite the older woman's protests, Clayton took Sophia on a tour of the ranch. They walked through the barn, where sleek horses regarded them with interest, and past the bunkhouse where the ranch hands lived. "Most of them are out with the herd today," Clayton explained. "We keep 10 men year-round, more during roundup and branding." "It's impressive," Sophia said, taking in the scope of the operation. "You've built something remarkable here." Clayton's expression was thoughtful as he gazed across his land. "When I first came here, I was running from memories. I threw myself into the work because it was easier than thinking about what I'd lost." He turned to face her. "But somewhere along the way, this place became more than just an escape. It became home." The simple sincerity of his words touched Sophia deeply. "I'm glad you found peace here." "Not just peace," Clayton said, his eyes holding hers. "A future." The implication wasn't lost on Sophia. Standing there, surrounded by the fruits of Clayton's labor and determination, she could easily imagine a life here: children playing in the yard, meals shared in the dining room, books read by the fire on winter evenings. It was a vision both thrilling and terrifying in its clarity. "Clayton," she began, uncertain how to express the tumult of emotions his words had stirred. "I'm not asking for an answer today," he said quickly. "I know it's soon, but I wanted you to see this place to understand what I'm offering." Sophia nodded, grateful for his patience. "Thank you for showing me." As they walked back toward the house, Clayton's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as naturally as if they'd been doing it for years. And in that moment, despite all her practical reservations, Sophia knew that she was falling in love with Clayton O'Malley. The summer progressed, hot and golden, as Sophia and Clayton's courtship deepened. July gave way to August, and with it came preparations for the cattle drive to Denver. Clayton would be gone for nearly 3 weeks, the longest they had been apart since meeting. "I wish you didn't have to go," Sophia said the evening before his departure. They were sitting on the small porch outside her rooms, enjoying the cooler air after a sweltering day. "It's the most important drive of the year," Clayton explained. "I need to be there to negotiate the prices. The income from this sale will see the ranch through winter." Sophia nodded, understanding the necessity even as she dreaded the separation. "I'll miss you." Clayton's hand covered hers where it rested on the porch railing. "I'll miss you too, but I'll be back before you know it." He hesitated, then added, "And when I return, there's something important I want to ask you." Sophia's heart quickened. She had a good idea what that question might be, and despite their relatively short acquaintance, she was increasingly certain of her answer. "I'll be waiting." The following morning, Sophia rose early to see Clayton off. The cattle drive would leave from the ranch, but Clayton had ridden into town one last time to bid her farewell. They stood outside the mercantile, the streets still quiet in the early dawn. "Write if you can," Sophia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Every chance I get," Clayton promised. He cupped her face gently, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. "Sophia Zimmerman, you've brought light back into my life. Remember that while I'm gone." Then, propriety be damned, he kissed her. It was their first kiss, gentle but sure, a promise of things to come. When they parted, Sophia felt a bit dizzy, her heart racing beneath her practical work dress. "Be safe," she whispered. Clayton mounted his horse, tipping his hat to her. 3 weeks, he said. "Then I'll be back for my answer." As she watched him ride away, Sophia hugged herself, already counting the days until his return. The first week of Clayton's absence dragged by. Sophia threw herself into her work at the mercantile, taking inventory, organizing shelves, and assisting customers with more energy than usual. In the evenings, she read from the growing collection of books Clayton had given her, or wrote in her journal about her hopes and fears for the future. True to his word, Clayton sent a letter with a passing rider 4 days after his departure. His handwriting was neat but masculine, the words simple yet heartfelt. "My dearest Sophia, the drive proceeds well, though the days are long and dusty. Each night, as I look up at the stars, I think of you and count the days until I can see your face again. The men tease me for my distraction, but I care not. They don't understand what it is to find something precious after believing such things were no longer possible. Take care of yourself until I return. Yours, Clayton." Sophia read the letter so many times she nearly memorized it, the paper growing soft from handling. She composed a reply, though she knew it would never reach him on the trail. "Dear Clayton, Silver Creek seems emptier without you. I find myself looking toward the hills, imagining I might see you riding in. Mrs. Gardner says I'm lovesick, and perhaps she's right. I never expected to find someone like you when I came here, yet now I can hardly remember what my life was like before we met. Return safely to me. With affection, Sophia." The second week brought unexpected news to Silver Creek. A railroad company had sent representatives to survey possible routes for a new line, and one of the proposed paths would bring the tracks directly through town. The entire community buzzed with excitement at the prospect of easier travel and commerce. It would change everything, Mr. Thornton told Sophia as they closed the store one evening. More goods, more customers, more opportunity for everyone. Sophia nodded, thinking of what it might mean for her and Clayton. With a railroad, visits to Denver would be simpler, the isolation of frontier life lessened. It was an exciting prospect. As she walked home that evening, Sophia was so lost in thoughts of the future that she didn't notice the figure waiting in the shadows near her building until he spoke. "Evening, Miss Zimmerman." Sophia started, her hand flying to her throat. Jack Reardon, the cowboy who had confronted Clayton at the festival, stepped into the dim light of the street lamp. He looked sober tonight, though no less intimidating. "Mr. Reardon," she acknowledged cautiously, "what can I do for you?" Reardon removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "I wanted to apologize for my behavior at the festival. I was drunk and out of line." The apology surprised Sophia. "Thank you, Mr. Reardon. Apology accepted." He nodded but made no move to leave. "O'Malley's a good man," he said after a moment, "despite our differences." "Yes, he is," Sophia agreed, wondering where this conversation was heading. Reardon looked uncomfortable. "Thing is, miss, there's talk about the bar tea. My boss, Mr. Tanner, he's not pleased about O'Malley's success. There's been suggestions." A chill ran down Sophia's spine. "What kind of suggestions?" "Nothing specific," Reardon said quickly. "But tensions are high with the cattle prices dropping, and now with this railroad business." He trailed off, then squared his shoulders. "Just tell O'Malley to watch his back when he returns, that's all." Before Sophia could question him further, Reardon replaced his hat and walked away, disappearing into the gathering darkness. She stood there for a long moment, unsettled by the encounter. Was it a genuine warning or some kind of threat that night? Sleep eluded her. Sophia tossed and turned, Reardon's words playing over in her mind. The frontier could be a dangerous place, she knew that, but the idea of Clayton being in danger, because of some ranching rivalry, was deeply disturbing. The next morning, Sophia considered telling Sheriff Davis about Reardon's visit, but decided against it. The lawman would likely dismiss it as vague hearsay, and she didn't want to cause trouble for Reardon if he had genuinely been trying to help. Instead, she wrote another letter to Clayton, this one to be delivered to him in Denver upon his arrival. "Dear Clayton, I hope this finds you well and the drive successful. Something unusual happened last night. Jack Reardon approached me with what seemed to be a warning about tensions between your ranch and the bar tea. He mentioned that Mr. Tanner is unhappy about your success and suggested you should be careful upon your return. I don't know how seriously to take this, but felt you should be aware. I look forward to your safe return. Yours, Sophia." She sealed the letter and arranged for it to be sent with the next mail coach to Denver, hoping it would reach Clayton before he started for home. The third week of Clayton's absence was marked by unusual activity in Silver Creek. The railroad surveyors continued their work, now accompanied by men in expensive suits who examined the town with calculating eyes. Property values were already being discussed over drinks at the saloon, and several townspeople had received offers for their land. On Thursday of that week, Sophia was surprised to see Victoria Hargrove enter the mercantile shortly before closing time. The widow was elegantly dressed as always, though her expression was troubled. "Miss Zimmerman," she greeted, approaching the counter. "I wonder if I might have a word." "Of course, Mrs. Hargrove," Sophia replied, setting aside the ledger she had been balancing. "How may I help you?" Victoria glanced around to ensure they were alone before speaking. "It's about Clayton, or rather about what might happen when he returns." Sophia tensed. "What do you mean?" "My father is involved with the railroad negotiations," Victoria explained. "He mentioned that Theodore Tanner of the Bar T Ranch is pushing hard for the tracks to cross his land rather than follow the valley route that would benefit the double circle." "I don't understand what that has to do with Clayton's safety," Sophia said, though a growing sense of unease told her otherwise. Victoria's perfectly arched eyebrows rose. "My dear, surely you understand that with the kind of money involved in these railroad deals, men have been known to take extreme measures to ensure their interests are protected." "Are you suggesting Mr. Tanner would harm Clayton?" Sophia asked bluntly. "I'm suggesting that Clayton has powerful enemies, and this railroad has raised the stakes considerably." Victoria adjusted her gloves. "I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, Miss Zimmerman, but I respect Clayton. I wouldn't want to see him injured because he was unaware of the danger." Sophia studied the older woman, trying to discern her motives. "Why tell me this? Why not go to the sheriff and say what?" "That I overheard conversations that hint at possible violence." Victoria shook her head. "Sheriff Davis would need more than that, but Clayton trusts you. He might heed a warning from you where he would dismiss it from others." There was logic in Victoria's words, and despite their somewhat adversarial relationship, Sophia believed the woman was genuinely concerned for Clayton's welfare. "Thank you for telling me this," Sophia said finally. "I've already written to Clayton about similar concerns. I'll make sure he understands the seriousness of the situation when he returns." Victoria nodded, apparently satisfied. "Good, Clayton O'Malley is a stubborn man, but he's not a fool." She turned to leave, then paused. "You care for him a great deal, don't you?" "I do," Sophia admitted. "Then God help you both," Victoria said softly. "Men like Clayton don't come to the frontier unless they're running from something. Remember that." With those cryptic words, she swept out of the store, leaving Sophia with even more to worry about. That night, unable to sleep, Sophia sat by her window watching the stars and thinking of Clayton. Was he looking at the same stars somewhere on the trail back from Denver? Was he safe? The warnings from both Reardon and Victoria weighed heavily on her mind. More troubling still were Victoria's parting words. Was Clayton still running from his past, from the memory of Elizabeth? Sophia had come to believe that he had made peace with those ghosts, but doubt was a persistent companion in the small hours of the night. The next day, Friday, brought news that the cattle drive had successfully reached Denver and was now on its return journey. Clayton would be back in Silver Creek by Monday or Tuesday, depending on the weather and the condition of the herd. Sophia's heart lifted at the prospect of seeing him again, even as her concern for his safety deepened. Sunday found her in church, praying more fervently than usual for Clayton's safe return. After the service, as she stood chatting with Mrs. Gardner, she noticed Sheriff Davis in deep conversation with several town elders. Their expressions were grave. "What do you suppose that's about?" Sophia asked Mrs. Gardner. The older woman frowned. "I'm not sure, but Tom Davis doesn't wear that look unless there's trouble brewing." Sophia excused herself and approached the group, catching the tail end of the sheriff's statement. "Reports of armed men seen near the North Valley Road. Could be nothing, could be trouble. Either way, I'm riding out to investigate." "Sheriff Davis," Sophia called, her heart suddenly racing. "The North Valley Road isn't that the route the double-circle cattle drive would take coming back from Denver?" The sheriff turned, his weathered face revealing nothing. "It is, Miss Zimmerman, but there's no cause for alarm, probably just some hunters or prospectors passing through." Sophia wasn't convinced. Clayton's drive is due back tomorrow or Tuesday if there are armed men on that road. "I'm aware of Mr. O'Malley's schedule," Davis said, his tone gentler. "That's why I'm checking it out personally, now if you'll excuse me." As the sheriff walked away, Sophia felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. The warnings, the railroad negotiations, armed men on the North Road, it couldn't all be coincidence. She spent a restless Sunday night, alternating between pacing her small room and staring out the window at the distant hills, as if she might somehow spot Clayton's approach. By Monday morning, she was exhausted but determined. After a brief conversation with Mr. Thornton, who readily granted her the day off upon hearing her concerns, Sophia borrowed a horse from the livery stable and set out for the Double Circle Ranch. The 10-mile ride was longer than any Sophia had attempted alone, but determination drove her forward. If Clayton was indeed in danger, she needed to warn Martha and Eric Jensen. Together, they might be able to send help or at least prepare for trouble. She reached the ranch shortly before noon, relieved to find Martha in the kitchen preparing dinner for the hands. "Miss Zimmerman," Martha exclaimed, wiping flour from her hands. "We weren't expecting you. Is everything all right?" Quickly, Sophia explained her fears, the warnings from Reardon and Victoria, the armed men spotted by the sheriff, the tension over the railroad route. Martha's expression grew increasingly serious as she listened. "Eric," she called through the open door. "Come in here right away." Eric Jensen appeared moments later, his expression changing from curiosity to concern as his wife relayed Sophia's story. "I don't like it," he said when she finished. "Tanner's been making noise about the double circle expanding too much, taking too much water rights, and with this railroad business." He shook his head. "Clayton should have been back by now. The drive was making good time according to the telegram we got from Denver." "What can we do?" Sophia asked, her fear mounting. Eric considered for a moment. "I'll gather some of the men and ride out to meet them. If there's trouble, Clayton might need backup." "I'm coming with you," Sophia said firmly. Both Martha and Eric protested, but Sophia was adamant. "I'll stay well behind if there's any sign of danger, but I can't just sit here waiting. I can't." Perhaps it was the desperation in her voice, or maybe they recognized the depth of her feelings for Clayton, but eventually they relented. Eric selected 4 of his most trusted hands, and within an hour they were riding toward the North Valley Road, Sophia among them despite her fatigue from the morning's journey. They had been riding for nearly 2 hours when they spotted dust in the distance, the unmistakable sign of a large herd on the move. Eric signaled for the group to halt, studying the approaching dust cloud through a spyglass. "It's them," he confirmed. "I can see our brand on the lead steer." He continued to scan the scene. Clayton's at the front with 2 of the men, the rest are spread out alongside the herd. They look alert, wary. "Do you see anyone else?" Sophia asked anxiously. "Any sign of trouble?" Eric shook his head, lowering the spyglass. "Not from this distance." "But that doesn't mean it's not coming." He turned to his men. "Spread out, keep your eyes open. Any sign of movement from the ridges or the tree line, you signal immediately." As the ranch hands dispersed, Eric turned to Sophia. "Stay close to me, Miss Zimmerman. If there's trouble, you ride hard for the ranch, understand?" Sophia nodded, though she had no intention of leaving if Clayton was in danger. They continued forward at a steady pace, the gap between them and the cattle drive closing gradually. Sophia strained her eyes, trying to make out Clayton's figure among the distant riders. They were perhaps half a mile from the drive when the first shot rang out. The sharp crack echoed across the valley, followed immediately by shouts and the panicked lowing of cattle. Sophia watched in horror as riders scattered, some taking cover, others trying to control the suddenly agitated herd. Ambush? Eric yelled, drawing his rifle from its scabbard. From the ridge to the east, more shots followed, kicking up dust near the lead riders. Sophia's heart pounded as she searched desperately for Clayton among the chaos. There, Eric pointed. Clayton's taken cover behind that outcropping. He's returning fire. Indeed, Sophia could now make out Clayton's figure, partially sheltered by rocks, his rifle raised toward the ridge where puffs of smoke revealed the attackers' positions. We need to circle around, Eric decided. Come at them from behind while they're focused on the drive. He turned to Sophia. This is where you head back to the ranch. No, Sophia said firmly. I'm staying. Eric looked like he might argue, but another volley of shots changed his mind. Stay with Jack, he ordered, indicating one of the younger hands. Keep to the tree line and stay low. As Eric and the other men rode off to flank the attackers, Sophia and Jack moved their horses into the cover of the trees that lined the valley floor. From this position, they had a clearer view of the firefight. Clayton and his men were pinned down but holding their own, returning fire whenever possible. The cattle had scattered somewhat but were being kept from a full stampede by several experienced drovers. How many attackers do you think there are? Sophia asked Jack, her voice barely audible over the gunfire. Hard to say, maybe 5 or 6 from the spread of the shots. Jack's young face was tense but determined. Mr. Jensen and the boys will get behind them, turn the tables. Sophia prayed he was right. She couldn't bear the thought of Clayton being hurt or worse when she had come so close to finding happiness with him. The gunfight continued for what seemed like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then suddenly, new shots rang out from the ridge. Eric and his men had reached their position and were now firing on the ambushers from behind. Caught in the crossfire, the attackers' resolve broke. Sophia watched as several figures emerged from cover, hands raised in surrender. Others mounted horses and fled, pursued by some of Eric's men. It's over, Jack said, relief evident in his voice. They're giving up. Sophia didn't wait for permission. She urged her horse forward, galloping toward the outcropping where she had last seen Clayton. As she approached, her heart nearly stopped. He was no longer visible behind the rocks. Clayton, she called, dismounting and rushing forward. Clayton, where are you? Sophia, the voice came from behind a larger boulder a few yards away. Clayton emerged, dusty and disheveled, a bloody bandage tied around his upper arm but very much alive. Sophia, what in God's name are you doing here? He demanded, striding toward her. She didn't answer with words. Instead, she threw herself into his arms, heedless of the blood or the dust, or the fact that they were surrounded by cowboys and cattle. Clayton's good arm wrapped around her, holding her tightly against him. I was so afraid, she whispered against his chest. I heard there might be trouble, and then the sheriff said there were armed men on the road. Clayton pulled back enough to look at her face, his expression a mixture of concern and tenderness. You rode all this way because you were worried about me. Of course I did, Sophia said, suddenly self-conscious. I love you, Clayton O'Malley. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you. The words had slipped out unbidden, but Sophia found she didn't regret them. They were true, had been true for longer than she had been willing to admit to herself. Clayton's eyes widened, then softened. With gentle fingers, he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I love you too, Sophia Zimmerman, more than I thought possible. Around them, men were securing the captured ambushers and regrouping the scattered cattle. Eric approached, his expression shifting from concern to amusement as he took in the scene. Sorry to interrupt, but we've got 3 of Tanner's men in custody, he reported. They've admitted he sent them to delay the drive so it would miss the deadline for the cattle auction. Said nothing about killing anyone, though that's not how it looked from where I was standing. Clayton nodded, though his eyes never left Sophia's face. We'll let Sheriff Davis sort it out. For now, let's get the herd moving again. We're only a few hours from home. As the men remounted and the drive resumed its journey, Clayton insisted that Sophia ride beside him at the front. His injury, though painful, wasn't serious, a bullet graze that had bled freely, but done no lasting damage. "I was going to ask you something when I got back to town," Clayton said as they rode side by side, the afternoon sun warming the valley around them. "But since you're here, and since you've already said the words I most wanted to hear." He reined his horse to a stop, prompting Sophia to do the same. From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box. "I had this made in Denver," he explained, opening it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. "Sophia Zimmerman, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Despite having anticipated this moment, Sophia found herself overwhelmed with emotion. Tears blurred her vision as she nodded. "Yes," she managed. "Yes, Clayton, I will." With a smile that outshone the sun, Clayton slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, catching the light with every movement of her hand. "When we get back to the ranch," he said, "we'll make plans. Whatever kind of wedding you want, wherever you want it." "I don't need anything elaborate," Sophia assured him. "Just you and perhaps a few friends to witness our vows." Clayton leaned across the space between their horses to kiss her, a brief but tender promise of their future together. "You've made me the happiest man in Colorado territory, Sophia Zimmerman." As they continued toward the double circle, now visible in the distance, Sophia marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had come to Silver Creek seeking security and independence, never imagining she would find love with a man like Clayton O'Malley. Life on the frontier was unpredictable, often harsh, but it was also full of unexpected blessings. The wedding took place 3 weeks later, a simple but joyous affair held in the Silver Creek church. Sophia wore a cream-colored dress that Mrs. Gardner had helped her make, adorned with the silver hairpin Clayton had given her. Martha Jensen had baked a 3-tiered cake, and the entire town turned out to celebrate. Even Victoria Hargrove, who offered sincere congratulations. Theodore Tanner faced charges for the ambush, though his powerful connections meant he received only a fine and probation. The railroad ultimately chose a route that benefited both the double circle and several smaller ranches, bypassing the Bar T entirely, a development that many viewed as poetic justice. As for Jack Reardon, his warning to Sophia had earned him Clayton's gratitude and a job offer. He now worked as one of the double circle's trusted hands, his loyalty to his new employer unquestioned. Sophia and Clayton moved into the ranch house immediately after the wedding. She brought her books and a few cherished possessions from her room in town, but found she needed little from her old life. The house was already home because Clayton was there. On their first evening as husband and wife, they stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the valley in hues of gold and crimson. "Happy?" Clayton asked, his arm around her waist. Sophia leaned into him, savoring his warmth and strength. "More than I ever thought possible." "You know," Clayton said thoughtfully, "when I saw you standing in the shadows at that dance, I never imagined where asking you to dance would lead." "I'm glad you asked," Sophia replied, turning in his arms to face him. "And I'm even more glad I said yes." Clayton's smile was tender as he brushed a kiss across her forehead. "That's one thing I've learned out here, Sophia. Life doesn't always give second chances. When opportunity presents itself, whether it's a piece of land, a business deal, or a beautiful woman standing alone at a dance, you have to be brave enough to reach for it." "And now?" Sophia asked, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "Now we build our life together," Clayton said simply. "Day by day, season by season, and I promise you, Sophia O'Malley, not a day will pass that I don't thank God for bringing you to Silver Creek." As darkness settled over the Double Circle Ranch, Sophia and Clayton went inside, closing the door on the world outside. Their journey had only just begun, but they would face whatever came hand in hand. Their love a beacon in the wild and beautiful frontier they both now called home. In the years that followed, the Double Circle prospered under their joint stewardship. Sophia established a small school for the children of the ranch hands and neighboring homesteads, fulfilling her desire to teach while remaining close to home. The library she had dreamed of became reality as well, first as a single bookshelf in the Silver Creek General Store, later as a proper reading room attached to the schoolhouse. Their first child, a daughter they named Catherine, arrived a year after their wedding. She was followed 2 years later by a son, William, and eventually by twins, Alina and James. The O'Malley children grew up strong and confident, equally at home on horseback or with their noses in books, a perfect blend of both their parents. Silver Creek grew with the coming of the railroad, becoming a prosperous town rather than a struggling outpost. Clayton and Sophia were regarded as leading citizens, their opinions sought on matters ranging from town improvements to disputes between neighbors. On their 20th wedding anniversary, as they sat surrounded by their children and friends in the expanded ranch house that had witnessed so much of their shared life, Clayton raised his glass in a toast. "To my Sophia," he said, his voice still strong though silver now threaded his dark hair, "who stepped out of the shadows and into my heart. Every day with you has been a blessing." Sophia, her own beauty matured but undiminished by the years, smiled at the man who had transformed her life that night long ago with 4 simple words: "Dance with me." And as she had done countless times in the years since, Sophia took his hand and followed him into the dance, their steps as perfectly matched as their hearts.